So good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the Bridge to Tomorrow's Talent, and I'm your host, Zachary Hill. Today, we're joined by John Siegman, CEO of PropertyLens. John, please tell us a little bit about what you guys do at PropertyLens.
Thanks, Zachary. At PropertyLens, we are aiming to help a home buyer. If you look at the home buying experience, it is totally geared to the seller. But the home buyer is the person bringing all the money to the table. And so we decided that creating essentially a Carfax for houses would be a great help for people looking to buy a house, trying to get an understanding of what's around the house from a hazard standpoint, a neighborhood standpoint, what the roof is, is the roof in good shape, how old are some of the key pieces in the house, what they should expect from an ongoing expense standpoint in the first couple of years. Have taxes been going up, insurance been going up, at what rate does it go up? So you actually understand that your first year's expenses probably aren't going to be the same as your second year's expenses. Understand crime in the neighborhood, all sorts of different pieces, factors, whether or not it's in a flood zone, just to better understand what somebody is truly getting themselves into.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, I know I'm a recent homeowner myself in my first home, and I definitely would have liked to know some of those things going into the home buying process and looking at different houses that I looked at as I was looking to buy. So I can definitely see how that's really, really useful for folks. And I love that you guys have that focus on like the buyer instead of the seller, because I do feel like a lot of things in the kind of real estate space do have their focus on more on the seller side. So that's awesome to see for you guys.
Well, and totally makes sense because the seller is the one with the product. But as a buyer, once you've bought the house, there is no getting out of it, right? If you decide 6 months later that, hey, I want out of this house, you're probably looking at about a 10% loss because of all the closing costs, another set of sellers and buyers fees for the agents, things along those lines. So it's not a easy to get out of decision if you make a bad decision. And even if you just make an average decision, you find out so much more afterwards that we're trying to help people find out before.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I like the way you put it, like Carfax, but for a house, right? That's great. If we're going to have that kind of tool for something like a car, we definitely need it for something like a house.
You would think so.
I was thinking about it since we talked and before today. What would you say your industry is when you think about it? Are you in the real estate industry, or do you see it differently since you're providing like a web tool?
I think the cool investment term is technology. Yep. We're trying to take a lot of technology. We used a lot of AI. We used a lot of models. We use a lot of data that we have built to provide an answer with regard to property. So I think, if somebody says, what do you do? I always answer, we make Carfax for houses. But if you're trying to classify the company with a NAICS code or whatever, we would be in the prop tech space.
Okay. Yeah. And see, that's why I wanted to ask, because that's so interesting. In our work with students, their like awareness of what everything they can go do is so limited. I don't think if I ask them about, property technology, that they would even really know what that means. I mean, even maybe college level students, right?
Yeah. Because it could very easily mean a ton of different things to a ton of different people, right? Nest thermostats could be considered property technology, right?
Okay.
Smart home technology. All of these things, when you're thinking about it in a physical sense. But if you step back and you look at ways to streamline getting a loan for the house, getting a mortgage, ways to get through title insurance, ways to get new owner's insurance. You had all the stuff that you had to go through when you were buying your house and thinking, oh my God, there's got to be a better way to do this. That's what prop tech is sort of all focused on, is the better way to do this.
Okay. And then can you tell me a little bit about like how did you get your start in that field? How did you get into, property technology? What led you
Yeah.
here?
So I and my co-founder Bob have been doing things geo related essentially most of our careers. And
Okay.
previous to PropertyLens, we started a company called HazardHub. And HazardHub was a geospatial hazard data company that could tell you all of the bad things that were going to happen to a property. So the house that I'm currently in is an F for wildfire. It's a C for earthquake. It's pretty much an A or a B for every other hazard you could possibly imagine. Because I'm in Southern California and we don't have hail, we don't have tornadoes, we don't have avalanches, we don't have
Hurricanes here, yeah.
right. Yeah, we have wildfires and we have earthquakes, or as I refer to it, shake and bake. The approach that we take, though, is we said, okay, we built that company up. We sold it back in August of 2021 to one of the largest providers of insurance policy admin systems. And they always tell you don't do anything rash when you sell your company. There were 9 of us in the company. Within 4 weeks of closing the deal, we had 3 first-time home buyers, we had 3 move-up buyers, and we had 3 founders buying a second house. And we ran HazardHub on all of those properties. We ran, hey, what's it exposed to? Is it in a crime area? Is it in a flood? Is it this? Is it that? What permits have been pulled? How old is it? How many owners has it had? Pieces and parts that we thought we knew. My co-founder, Bob, bought a beach house in Edina, Minnesota, on the banks of the beautiful Minnehaha Creek. It had an 87-year-old house. So he knew it was in a 500-year flood zone. He knew it had radon issues. It was exposed to hail. We knew that based on the permits, it had a newer roof, but we couldn't see it. You can't really ask the person, hey, can you lend me a ladder so I can go climb on your roof?
Right.
Well, the roof is an important structural piece to a house. So we had to go talk to friends who did aerial imagery to find out about the roof. We had to go into the city to pull things that, there was no other way to get. And we thought to ourselves, why isn't this all in one place for a home buyer? Because other people have access to this data. They just have it in buckets sitting around, and if you don't ask, you're never going to get it. And so we said, you know what? We can do that. We should stop saying that on occasion. But we said, okay, let's go do it. And we actually took the concept to the company that had bought us. They really had no interest in funding it or playing with us. So we left and said, okay, well, take 2, let's go do this.
That's awesome. So would you classify yourself as an entrepreneur then with 2 companies under your belt now, or?
I think by default, most people would. I can tell you that entrepreneurs make lousy employees. And I've been fired 6 times, so that's probably the case. It happens. The joy of starting your own company is you get to not get fired, but you also have yourself as a boss, which may not be the best thing. So, I mean, there are certain people who can live well within the confines of a corporate environment. There are some corporate environments that actually want people to speak up and push back and things like that, but those are very far and few between. So if you are one of those people, you're probably better off figuring out what you do differently and going off and doing it.
Great. And so, with you going into creating your own companies, and I know you said you had a couple other experiences besides that happened. I mean, did you do what you went to school for? I see some certificates behind you. I don't know your education background, but do you feel like you're using the degrees you earned, or how did that roll out for you?
Yeah, I have the big one is Maryland, the smaller one is San Diego State. So my BS from Maryland is in marketing and transportation. My MBA is in marketing and international business. Clearly, if you are doing your own business, you need to be the salesperson for that business. And not only are you selling what you're doing and the concept, but you're selling, the confidence that you have to somebody else. Because when you're a startup, somebody buying from you is actually taking a risk. And
Definitely.
we did the first time with HazardHub into the insurance industry. Insurance is a very risk-averse entity, as you would expect. So safety from a buyer's standpoint is really important. If you're doing a consumer product or consumer-oriented product like we are this time, then we do have a growing B2B component to it. The person's not making as big a commitment. A single report is $69. A usual customer will save somewhere 20,000 plus on that $69 report. So it's a shoulder shrug, really. If they don't like the report, we'll refund their money. That's no issue. But it's a very low risk thing at $69. Where, when you're doing B2B, all of those contracts tend to be much larger. So you have to take the risk out of it to get a customer base. And, you can do that successfully if you can, not get paid up front. Like you pay after they've used it. And if they don't like it, they stop using it. No harm, no foul. It's a very different approach to a consumer-oriented sale. And on the B2B side, they're going to come in, they're going to use it and use it and use it and use it. And we've got APIs for them to do so. On the consumer side, you're probably not moving for another 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
Yeah.
The first house that my wife and I bought a long time ago after getting married, she thought we were going to be in the rest of our lives. House we're currently in, we will be in the rest of our lives. So it's a 2-move event, right?
Right.
And that's it. So this is on the plus side, about 4 million houses are going to get sold this year. About 4 million got sold last year. So there's 4 million plus opportunities for somebody to buy a report.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. But you're right. It's not something that people are doing every couple months. It's not something that people are doing all the time. Yeah. Hard to get repeat customers, right? Because they use it, they're good, they're done for a while.
Yeah. So, you might be at a house 5, 10 years. You might have 3 cars that you buy during that time.
Right.
Right. Where, if you time it right, you might not have to replace the HVAC or the water heater based upon how long you live someplace. In our first house, we were there for 15 years. I think we replaced the water heaters, and it was a brand new house when we bought it, and then we built the house, so it was brand new when we moved into it. As I told my wife, the ultimate plan is for everybody to buy a brand new house every 15 years, because the only thing you'll ever have to deal with probably is a water heater. And then you leave everything for everybody else to deal with after you left.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, thank you. That gives me a lot better understanding of kind of what you guys do and how it works there for you. And I've got to ask, because it seems like such a cool thing that you got involved in. Did you have any mentors or anybody that kind of helped you when you were, just starting out, in your 20s and in your early 30s? Somebody that helped kind of guide your way?
I've had a number of great bosses at other companies. The first boss coming out of graduate school at San Diego Gas and Electric, Les Awashi, great guy. Definitely whoever your first boss is coming out of school is going to set a significant tone for the rest of your career. My second boss at National Decision Systems, the company where I met Bob, guy by the name of Steve Heffernan, totally, different approach. Totally, okay, this is what we got to do to get this to grow, because, It was more of a sales type of emphasis, a development type of emphasis. I had a number of different bosses at National Decision Systems. John Voorhees definitely played a key role. And then, from there, went to a company called Qualitative Marketing Software. That was my first. NDS was a startup, but it was a very established startup. QMsoft was a true startup.
Okay.
And who I've worked for twice, so I liked him so much I went to another company that he started. Definitely, all of these people played a key role. And then while I was at QMsoft, I met a gentleman, Dr. Brady Faust, PhD, and he actually was our third partner at HazardHub. And so I've known Brady, 25 years, and, was all along the way, we worked together at different companies. So it's weird, and people don't think about it, but a lot of the people that you are going to meet in the first 10 years of your career, those are the people that are going to be with you for the 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40 years of your career. And so keep your eyes open.
Right.
And, don't be afraid to introduce yourself to people that you think are doing cool things or neat things or going above and beyond, because those will be the people that 20 years, 30 years later, you're still in touch with, you're still doing things with, you're still getting their opinion on things, and they're doing the same from you.
Right. Yeah. Really important to build out that professional network and really get to know people. And you think that putting your head down and getting your work done, that's not the way to do it. You got to network.
Well, you definitely got to put your head down and get the work done. But, if you come in the morning and start at whenever time you start, and you stay in your cube, and then, you go eat lunch, and then you come back to your cube, and then you go home, that's not going to get you what you really need to do, right?
Yeah.
So there is a life outside of work. I understand that, but a lot of the people that you are going to meet at work are going to be part of your extended family. So, you can't choose your family, you choose your friends, right? So, choose wisely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's a big thing we're always trying to reinforce with our interns and our apprentices here at Tomorrow's Talent, is to make sure that they understand that they got to get out there and talk to people. They got to get to know some folks, and they got to try some different things. That's why we like to get them out into the workforce when they're still in high school, so they can try things out.
Yeah.
But tell me, John, from your perspective, what do you see as some of the early stumbling points that folks have as they try to get into the kind of work you do?
Well, I think a lot of it is, just knowing that it's there, right? Yeah, we think about how we get stuff, right? We don't think about how we're marketed to. We don't think about all of those things. And it's changed, dramatically over the last 40 years, right? The number of direct mail pieces actually now is the startup time for direct mail to increase because we're coming towards Christmas. So I pity our poor mail person who's going to have to carry all of those catalogs.
Right.
Because, I'm part of the demographic that still looks at a catalog, right? And my wife is too. But for a lot of other people, it's the overwhelming barrage of stuff into their email. It's the targeted ads on the internet. It's the, oh, hey, you just looked at, whatever it happens to be that you looked at. And I always love the ones that, oh, no, I bought that, and now you're advertising it to me. That's a waste of your time and effort. But thank you for paying for whatever content I was looking at. So, whatever it is that you want to go do, or you want to think about doing, or just being aware that it's out there, you can go to LinkedIn, and any of your viewers, any of the kids I'm happy to link with them. So, and there aren't that many John Siegmans in San Diego, so you will be able to find me. There are 3 of us across the country, and I'm linked into my other 2 guys. And so go with people who have contacts. That's, number 1. Number 2 is don't be shy, right? Everybody fears rejection. The only thing that makes a salesperson better at it than you is they just shrug it off.
Right.
And so when it comes to that, if the person doesn't have time, most people are willing to help you out. And if they're not, you probably don't really want to know that person anyway.
Right. Probably time to move on. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you don't ask the person, the answer is always no. I used to do merit badges and stuff, and salesmanship merit badge, and you've got scouts that are 11, 12, 13, 14. And I would always ask, how many of you have gone on a date? And usually 1 or 2 or 3 would, bravely raise their hands at that age. And I would say, so you had to ask somebody out? And they were like, yes. And I said, has anybody ever said no to you? And a couple every now and then would admit that somebody said no, right? And I said, so the first question you ask them is, if there was one thing you could change about your boyfriend, what would it be? Because they're teenage girls, they'll dwell on that. But don't worry, she'll be available shortly thereafter. I said, but the other thing is, if you don't ask, guess what? The answer is always going to be no. So it's not a matter of not taking the swings. It's a matter of going out there and swinging. If you don't ask for the sale, you're never going to get the sale. If you don't ask for the contact, you're never going to get the contact. And so for all of the students that are looking at this and listening, ask. Don't be afraid to ask, because the worst thing that's happened is they say no. But guess what? That's the same answer you would have gotten if you didn't ask the question. It's not a personal thing. It's simply, you got to go and ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask somebody for their help. Most people actually want to help you.
That idea that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Exactly.
So if you're not out there asking, if you're not out there trying, then you're not going to get any results. So you got to at least put some of that try in.
Yep. And it's, and I know a bunch of students are sitting there watching this and going, oh, I could never do that. I could never do that. Yes, you can. It's not that hard. And like I said, most people want to be helpful.
So then when we're thinking about, young folks, about students trying to get into the workforce, and you said you think a big problem is that they just don't know about the opportunities that are out there, right? They just don't know about like property tech, for example, and how to get into it and what to do. What role do you think businesses and business leaders play in like spreading the word about their industry, about their, opportunities? How do you see that rolling out from that side?
So most businesses and most business leaders don't think about spreading the word at all. I can tell you I've never given it any thought until this question, because they're focused on getting their business and what their business does to other potential buyers.
Right.
And typically students aren't buyers. So the focus downward, or, to a younger audience, is typically not something that is top of mind. So, I think part of it has to be driven by the student.
Okay.
So if somebody is thinking, okay, what are great ways to make money? Well, again, teaching salesmanship merit badge, a salesperson is the only person who truly controls how much they make, because they can make one more phone call.
Right.
They can make one more sales call. They can go out and do that. And, as I tell people in that process, I say, I ask the kids, what do you want to be? And, you got an architect, you got this, you got that, you got all of these things. And it's like, as I ask them, I'm like, what do you think the 1,000th best architect in the US makes? Oh, probably this. I'm like, yeah, probably that. I said, what do you think the 1,000th best insurance salesman in the US makes? A lot more than that.
Right.
Right. So I think people need to step back and say, okay, what is it that interests me? And if I'm going to be 1,000th best, and nobody thinks about growing up and being 1,000th best at anything, right? I'm going to be the best baseball player that's ever lived. No one said I'm going to be the 1,000th best baseball player that's ever lived.
Right.
Because if you're the 1,000th best baseball player today, I don't even know if you're in the triple A's. You might be in the double A's, just looking at the number of people on the teams and the number of teams that are out there. So if you're going to be 1,000th best at something, be 1,000th best at something where you can make a very decent living. Now, I understand that, some people aren't concerned about that. I don't know how to talk to those people. But, I get it. And so for them, even in that case, if you're going to be 1,000th best, person doing whatever it is, figure out how you're not going to live off of your parents being the 1,000th best.
Right. Okay.
And then go start looking things up. There's, go to LinkedIn, type in, property and see what pops up and then reach out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Just find something that you want to do and go for it. Right.
And go for it. Because again, what's the worst thing that happens? You don't get a response.
Yeah.
And somebody else will respond.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Right. If it's not the first person you reach out to, and if you're trying to go into sales, that's a lesson to learn early.
Yeah, exactly.
So then as the workforce, changes as it always does, but right now we're seeing some pretty rapid changes to the workforce in the last few years. And as technology starts to fill in gaps in the work and we see entry-level positions change and mostly expectations grow, right? It can be a lot harder for a lot of young folks to see how they can break into like the professional workforce, right? It can be a lot harder for them to see that entry point because everything feels like it needs 5 years of experience, right? Everything feels like they got to get some experience before they can even get their foot in the door. I mean, do you think there's enough pathways for early professionals getting into the work, or what do you suggest people do to get around if they see that as their problem?
So everybody wants everybody to be experienced. That is just the nature of any job posting.
Right.
Most of them don't require it, right? When I started work to get into San Diego Gas and Electric, if you didn't have a master's degree, it just wasn't going to happen for you. That was the ticket to entry. Totally not necessary, but and it's probably from a degree standpoint. In our little group, pretty much everybody had a master's. We had a couple of PhDs. It was way overeducated for what we were doing. But that was the mindset, right? I would be looking for anybody coming to me today to say, hey, I want to be an intern or I want some experience or whatever it is. The first thing is you got to have some basic AI skills.
Okay.
You got to know what it is. You got to know, how to write a prompt or two, and the more lines you can stick in the prompt, the better. But you just have to have that. That is, I think, from a professional standpoint, a basic ticket now to entry.
Right.
You have to have computer skills. Right. So if you don't have, the knowledge to how to put together a spreadsheet and a slideshow and understand how to write and complete sentences, something other than text, you're going to you're going to be hindered. It's just the way it is. So those would be other skills that I would look for. People skills, no matter where you are, that's always going to be important. You don't have to be the life of the party, but you can't go in all dressed in black and things like that. And then depending upon what you want to do, you have to understand who the hiring audience is.
Okay.
Right. So if you're thinking, hey, I think insurance is interesting, most of the people at insurance companies that are hiring are a little bit younger than me.
Okay.
Right. So if you walk in with, you might be the world's greatest statistician, but if you walk in with a face tattoo, probably not going to get that gig.
Yeah.
Can't say that you won't, but you probably aren't.
Right.
And not because you're not
chances.
qualified.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the image of the company. Now, if you're walking in to be the financial expert at a tattoo parlor, you're probably the person, right?
Right.
So you have to think about all of those pieces and parts that go into what your representation of yourself is. I think the other thing that you have to do is have an honest resume. You know,
Okay.
This happened a long time ago, but when my wife left the workforce, they did a downsizing. She opted to participate, and they held a workshop for resumes and things like that. And even though she wasn't going to go back into the workforce, she went because she got to see all her friends from work type of thing. And she brought home this resume that they all thought was the best. And it was a sales resume. And she said, would you hire this guy? And I was like, no, absolutely not. And
Okay.
she's like, why? And I said, because at every job that he's been at, he's been the top performer. But he's only been at these jobs for 12 to 18 months. If you're in sales and you're the top performer, your company never lets you go.
Right. Right. Yeah. They want to keep on to their top performer. Yeah.
Right. And I said, and all that you can do when a company calls your company to say, hey, did they work there, is verify that you work there. They can't say that you were the worst performer. They can't say that they fired you. They can't say anything about anything except that you were there. So there's no way to disprove any of that. So you look at that. So if one of your students comes and puts together a resume that says, I was valedictorian, well, that's an easy thing to check. So unless you really were, right, don't put that down. Don't put down things that aren't true because they'll be found out. And then even if you are super qualified, you're out in most cases.
Right. A quick way to disqualify yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't exaggerate. What you've done is very plain. Focus on the benefit of whatever it is that you did to the company. So if you did something that saved them money, say how much money you saved.
Fair point. Yeah.
Right? If you did something that increased revenue, say by what percentage.
Right.
If you've done something, and these are things that quite honestly, even in internships, you can be doing as a student. Right?
Oh, yeah.
You're not going to get the keys or anything to the office, but if you figure out something and they implement it, that's a huge win. And that is definitely something that you should count on your resume. Because while we all know past performance doesn't equal future performance, showing that you've actually accomplished things is a pretty good indicator that you're probably likely to accomplish things in the future.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely better than not accomplishing, right? If we're looking at past performance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't care if you're a person at McDonald's and you're the counter person. If you upsell fries, because what's the standard thing? You want fries with that.
Right.
And you tell me that 90% of the time you added fries to a deal, as a sales manager, that's huge to me. Right? Most people
definitely
think of it that way. right? But yeah, or hey, I supersized 85% of the meals that came in front of me. That's a huge number, right? Now, if it's 85, but everybody else was doing 95, I'm not going to know that. So, okay, you weren't the best at it, but you still managed to convert 85% of the time, right? But, if you're employee of the month, that's oddly provable because I can walk into that McDonald's and read the plaque, right?
Right. See it. Yeah.
See it, but, be proud of that, right? And I've never worked at a McDonald's, so I'm just making stuff up here. But, you know, that's okay if you do those types of things. If you move into at your part-time job a, junior managerial role, that's huge. Talk about that. It's not, oh yeah, I'm, worked at such and such bookstore and you were, junior assistant manager. And, I closed, I took care of revenues, I took care of cash, I took care of this, took care of that. Even if it's not related at all to what you're currently looking at and applying for, it's a set of skills that shows that you can be trusted with business.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, I think that's really good advice because I know from my work with young folks that a lot of them don't think they have anything to put on the resume. But looking at it that way, it sounds like they definitely do.
They do. And they need to look at it from a different angle. And a lot of times it's very hard for a person to look at what they've done and come across as, okay, this had value, right? Well, I just doing my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. And it's like, no, yeah, you were, but here's the skill set that can transfer, right?
Yeah.
I don't expect you to flip burgers because I don't have burgers to flip.
Yep. Yep.
Right. But the fact that you were in charge of burger flipping and you managed to increase the throughput and increase the speed of that throughput and increase customer satisfaction with the burgers at the same time, that's huge.
Oh, yeah. Those are results.
Those are results.
Okay. So just to kind of sum up what I've heard today is definitely you've got to go out there and take the shot, right? You got to get out there and put in the effort. You need computer skills, AI skills. Those are different, but you need them both. And you need people skills. And to be honest about what you do and don't sell yourself short, right?
Yeah. Don't oversell, don't undersell, just sell.
Right, don't oversell either. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Gotta hit it right in the middle, right where it's honest. Is there any other, last words of wisdom you'd like to leave for anybody watching the podcast here? And I mean, that could be for students or for teachers or other business folks.
Words of wisdom coming from me is probably the last thing that anybody should pay attention to. But I think what you need to do is just sort of think about where you want to be.
Okay.
Because if you don't think about where you want to be, it's really hard to get there.
Okay.
Right. And don't worry if you don't have experience and you got a lot of education. Conversely, if you've got a lot of experience and no education, that's okay too. Right. And depending upon who you are, getting a college degree or high school or a graduate degree may not be the best use of your time. Everybody pushes you to go to college. Go to college, go to college, go to college. And right now, if a person isn't interested in college, go be an electrician, go be a plumber. Especially if you don't want to deal with AI and computers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can make a tremendously great living and be your own boss, go through the apprentice, process. You only need a high school degree to do it. And, have a very, very successful career. So, we gear everybody, I think, to the thought of, well, I got to go to college to be successful.
Mm.
First of all, success is what you determine it to be.
Right.
But second, no, you don't. And so, perfect example, I will close with this, is at the first job, I and a bunch of other new hires with our master's degree at San Diego Gas and Electric sat down and calculated what a meter reader made.
Mm.
And then looked at the 6 years that we spent in college and how much we didn't earn and how much we paid for the college experience, and knew that our break-even point was at about 12 years into our professional career,
Oh,
where
wow.
we would equal out the lost earnings
Right.
versus a meter reader.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. No, actually doing the math like that makes it pretty stark.
Yeah, made it very stark. Right? So you think differently. Now, of course, there are no meter reader jobs because they just drive by and get the electronic signal from the meters. So I don't suggest that as a career move for anybody. But there's a lot of other opportunities out there that don't require a college degree. So don't think that you have to go that route.
Okay. Okay. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts. It was really great talking to you. I know I learned a lot, and I hope our audience learned a lot too. And also thank you to everybody for joining us, either listening or watching along. We'll see you guys next time on the Bridge to Tomorrow's Talent.